there is a version of Earth that has never truly known peace. It is a world stitched together by contradictions, a planet where gods walk beside soldiers, where mutants hide behind human faces, where sorcerers guard doorways to realities most people will never see. It is beautiful and broken in equal measure, endlessly defended and endlessly threatened. A small blue jewel that somehow keeps drawing the attention of forces that should have destroyed it 100 times over. This is the Marvel Earth, and on the night our story begins, it is about to receive a visitor unlike any it has ever known. High above the atmosphere, in a place where the stars seem closer than they should, a silent rupture forms. It does not explode. It does not roar. It simply opens, the way a wound opens on skin, quiet and inevitable. And from that wound steps a figure the universe has almost forgotten. Tall, green, cloaked in the memory of a world that no longer exists. His name is Jayans, though on this earth no one has ever spoken it aloud. He is the last son of Mars, and he has traveled further than grief should ever allow. He does not descend in fire. He descends in silence, drifting through cloud and moonlight, watching the lights of unfamiliar cities blooming beneath him. Every skyline is wrong. Every constellation is slightly turned. He has crossed something deeper than distance to arrive here, and he knows it in the marrow of his ancient bones. This is not his universe. This is not his Earth. And yet, somehow, it feels achingly familiar, because pain always does. He lands in a quiet field far from any road, and for a long moment he simply stands there, listening. Not to the wind, not to the distant hum of machines. He listens to the minds of this world, the way a musician listens to an orchestra tuning itself before a symphony begins. Billions of thoughts rise up to meet him, chaotic, tender, angry, hopeful, afraid. He closes his eyes and lets them wash over him, and for the first time in a very long time he is not alone in his own head. But he does not reveal himself. He has learned, across too many lifetimes, that revelation is a kind of violence. Instead, he changes his shape. He becomes a traveler in a worn coat, a stranger with tired eyes, a face no one will remember. He walks through cities he has never seen, listens to languages he has never spoken, and lets the shape of this new world settle around him like a borrowed garment. He watches humanity from the shadows, patient as a monk, quiet as a prayer. He sees their heroes on flickering screens. He sees their monsters in the news. He sees children laughing in doorways and old men weeping in empty rooms, and slowly, carefully, he begins to understand. This earth is not his home, but it is a home, and it is drowning in a beauty it does not know how to protect. Yet even in his stillness, he cannot hide what he is. A mind like his cannot walk through a crowded world without leaving footprints in the psychic dust. Somewhere in a school for gifted children, a bald man in a wheelchair suddenly lifts his head, feeling a presence that should not exist. In a sanctum hidden inside a New York brownstone, a sorcerer with silver at his temples pauses mid-incantation, sensing a ripple that magic cannot name. In quiet corners of the globe, telepaths stir in their sleep, dreaming of red deserts they have never seen. For the first time in years, another mind is listening. And though Jayans does not yet know it, this earth has already begun to notice him. The last Martian has arrived on a new world, carrying the ashes of an old one in his heart, and though he came here in silence, silence will not be allowed to hold him for long. In the days that follow his arrival, Jayan moves through the world like a rumor. He is everywhere and nowhere, a shape glimpsed at the edge of a subway platform. A stranger who steadies a falling child and vanishes before anyone can thank him. A passenger on a train that no camera ever quite manages to capture clearly. He is careful, he is patient, but he is also learning, and every mind he brushes against teaches him something new about this strange, luminous, dangerous earth. In a quiet study lined with old books, Professor Charles Xavier sits very still. His tea has gone cold in front of him. He has been holding the same thought for nearly an hour, and it is not truly a thought at all. It is a feeling. A vast, gentle consciousness moving somewhere beyond the horizon of his own mind. He has felt many things in his life. He has touched the thoughts of gods and monsters, of dying stars and unborn children. But he has never felt anything quite like this. It is not aggressive. It is not curious in the way predators are curious. It is lonely, profoundly, beautifully lonely. and it is old in a way that makes him feel young. Across the city, in a house that is larger on the inside than it should be, Dr. Stephen Strange stands before the eye of Agamotto and frowns. The mystical currents that run beneath reality are trembling in a way he does not recognize. It is not a demon. It is not a rift. It is not the fingerprint of any sorcery he has cataloged in 1,000 years of hidden libraries. Whatever this is, it does not belong to magic. It belongs to something older, or perhaps something simply other, and that troubles him more than any villain ever has. Meanwhile, in windowless rooms lit by cold blue screens, intelligence agencies begin to whisper. Reports arrive from every continent. A landslide in the mountains stopped by an invisible force. A burning building emptied of its people in seconds by a figure no one can describe the same way twice. A hijacked plane guided gently back to the runway by a pilot who was not there a moment before and is not there a moment after. Analysts stare at grainy footage and argue about shapeshifters, about aliens, about mass hallucination. No one dares to say the word miracle, but the word hangs in the air anyway. Through all of this, Jaeon refuses to step into the light. He tells himself he is only observing. He tells himself he is only being cautious. But the truth, buried beneath the calm surface of his thoughts, is simpler and far more painful. He is afraid. He has watched a world die before. He has stood in the ruins of Mars and listened to the silence where his wife's laughter used to be, where his daughter's small hands used to reach up for his. He has learned that love is a door that opens both ways, and that on the other side of every attachment there is a country called loss. And so he holds himself back. He saves lives without saving anyone in particular. He listens without answering. He tells himself that if he never truly belongs to this world, he can never truly lose it. It is a lie, of course. He has told himself this lie many times, in many languages, on many worlds. But it is a comforting lie, and comfort is a rare thing for a man who carries a dead planet inside his chest. Yet Earth has a way of arguing with such lies. A young mother sings her child to sleep in a language he has never heard, and something inside him softens. A stranger gives a coat to a homeless man on a cold street, and something inside him listens. A choir practices in a small church at dusk, their voices imperfect and human and impossibly brave. And Jaeon finds himself standing in the doorway with tears he did not expect. Slowly, quietly, without ever meaning to, the people of this earth are beginning to change his mind. It is Charles Xavier who finds him first, though perhaps it is more accurate to say that they find each other. For weeks, the professor has been reaching out with the softest edge of his mind, the way a man might extend an open hand toward a wounded animal. He does not push. He does not demand. He simply waits, night after night, in the quiet garden behind his school, letting his thoughts drift into the wind like a candle in a dark window. And one evening, when the stars are especially bright and the world is especially still, the candle is finally answered. Jaeon steps out of the shadows between two trees, and he does not look like a man at all. He is tall and green-skinned, his eyes deep and steady, his cloak stirring in a wind that does not seem to belong to this world. He is not hiding anymore. He has chosen, for reasons he cannot yet name, to be seen. Charles does not flinch. He simply smiles, the small tired smile of a man who has spent his entire life learning not to be afraid of what is different. They do not speak with their mouths. There is no need. Their minds reach out across the garden and touch, gently at first, the way strangers might touch fingertips in the dark. And in that touch worlds unfold. Jaeon feels the weight of every dream Charles has carried, the school he built out of hope and heartbreak, the students he has loved and lost, the friend who became an enemy, the enemy who was once a brother. He feels the quiet ache of a man who has spent decades trying to convince humanity that difference is not a crime. And Charles in turn feels Mars. He feels red sand under a red sun. He feels the songs of a people who sang to their planet as if it were a mother. He feels the plague, the fires, the silence that came after. He feels a father's hands closing around a daughter's small, still body, and the impossible weight of being the only one left to remember. When their minds finally part, both of them are weeping, and neither of them is ashamed. They sit together for a long time on a bench beneath an old oak tree. Charles offers no easy comfort. He knows better than that. Instead, he offers something rarer. He offers understanding. He tells Jaeon about his students, about young people who have been called monsters simply for being born. He tells him about the dream of a world where difference is not a wound but a wonder. He tells him that the school is not a fortress but a home, and that homes are always big enough for one more. Jaeon listens. He does not answer right away. But when Charles finally invites him to walk through the school in the morning, to meet the children who might one day call him teacher, Jaeon does not say no. That in itself is a beginning. News of the meeting does not stay quiet for long. In a tower of glass and steel above the city, Tony Stark watches a stream of encrypted data scroll across a screen and rubs the bridge of his nose. Somewhere in a training room, Natasha Romanoff sharpens a blade a little more slowly than usual. In a quiet office, Nick Fury reads a single line of intelligence twice, then a third time, and lights a cigarette he had promised himself he would not smoke. A being has arrived on Earth who can read the mind of a city the way a man might read a menu. A being who can walk through walls, wear any face, hear any secret. To Charles Xavier, he is a kindred spirit. To others, he is something more complicated. Steve Rogers, ever the soldier and ever the human being, urges patience. Trust, he says, must be given before it can be returned. But not everyone in the room agrees. There are those whose lives depend on secrets. There are those who have built their identities around masks. And a telepath of such quiet, staggering power is, to them, less a hero than a mirror they are not ready to look into. Somewhere in the shadows, older powers stir as well. Kings of hidden nations, spies of forgotten agencies, sorcerers who have seen what happens when a stranger becomes a saint. They do not move against him, not yet, but they watch and they wait and they whisper. And Jaeon, who hears whispers the way other men hear thunder, understands exactly what is happening. He has been welcomed by some. He has been feared by others. And on this earth, as on every earth, the line between the two has always been thinner than anyone would like to admit. For a little while there is something that almost resembles peace. Jaeon walks the halls of the school and learns the names of children who look at him without fear. He drinks tea he does not need to drink because the ritual of it comforts him. He stands on the roof at night and listens to the world breathing beneath him, and for the first time in a very long time, he allows himself to imagine a future. It is a small imagining, tentative and fragile, but it is real. And that, more than anything, is what makes what comes next so cruel. It begins as a whisper at the edge of his mind. He is sitting quietly in Charles Xavier's study when he feels it, a distant pressure, like a storm gathering somewhere beyond the curve of the sky. At first he thinks it is nothing, a stray thought, a fragment of a dream leaking in from a sleeper on the other side of the world. But the pressure does not fade. It focuses, and slowly, terribly, he realizes that it is not moving toward him. It has already found him. It has been watching him for longer than he knew. Something old is out there, something that does not belong to this galaxy or perhaps even to this reality. It has no name in any language Jaeon knows, and yet it knows his. It felt the rupture that brought him here. It tasted the psychic wake he left across the stars. And now, from somewhere far beyond the orbit of any human telescope, it is reaching out with fingers made of thought and hunger. At first its touch is delicate. It does not attack. It seeds. Across the galaxy, in places both distant and near, ordinary minds begin to change. A commander on a Kree warship wakes up certain that his own crew is plotting against him. A Skrull ambassador moments before signing a peace treaty is suddenly, inexplicably filled with rage. A senator on Earth begins to hear voices telling him that his neighbors are enemies, that his friends are liars, that trust is a weakness he can no longer afford. The seeds are small, but they grow quickly, because paranoia is the easiest crop in the universe to raise. Heroes are not immune. On distant space stations, Nova Corpsmen begin turning on one another over imagined betrayals. In hidden monasteries, sorcerers accuse their masters of corruption. Even the Avengers begin to feel a strange friction they cannot explain. Small arguments that go on too long, glances held a second too sharply, doubts that stick where doubts never used to stick. It is not a spell. It is not a virus. It is something older, something patient, something that does not need to conquer worlds because it can simply convince them to devour themselves. Dr. Strange feels it before most. He sits in the sanctum sanctorum with the eye of Agamotto open in his hand, and he sees for the briefest of moments the shape of the thing behind the veil. He recoils. He whispers a warning into a mirror that carries his voice to Jaeon across the city. "This is not magic," he says. "This is not any darkness I have named. Whatever this is, it thinks, and it is hungry." Jaeon already knows. He has felt this kind of appetite before, in the deep silence between worlds, in the stories his elders told when he was a child on Mars. A psychic predator. A thing that feeds on fear and grief and the sweet burning fuel of a mind at war with itself. He had hoped, as one hopes and dreams, that his people's oldest nightmares were only that. He had hoped he would never have to face one again. He rises slowly from his chair. He looks out the window at a city that does not yet know it is being infected, and he understands with a clarity that is almost peaceful that the time for hiding is over. He came here to grieve. He came here to disappear. But grief has a way of finding purpose whether we invite it or not. And Jaeon's has never been very good at looking away. The first sign that the world is falling is not a scream. It is a silence. Across cities and satellites and hidden bases, people simply stop trusting one another. A father looks at his son and sees a stranger. A soldier looks at his commander and sees a threat. Old friends pass one another on the street and feel a cold, small voice whispering that the smile they just received was not truly meant. The infection is invisible, and that is what makes it so terrible. You cannot fight what you cannot see, and you cannot save someone who has already begun to doubt the ground beneath their own feet. The Avengers fracture first. It happens quietly, in a conference room that has held 1,000 harder conversations. An old grievance surfaces where it should not. A joke lands wrong. A hand tightens on the edge of a table. Within hours, teams are choosing sides for reasons no one can quite name. And Steve Rogers, standing in the middle of it, feels his own certainty beginning to slip. He looks at his oldest friends and, for the briefest moment, sees enemies. Then he closes his eyes and prays for the strength to remember who he is. The X-Men suffer even more deeply. They are, after all, a family built out of minds. When minds are turned against themselves, families burn quickly. Students accuse teachers. Teachers accuse one another. Old wounds that Charles Xavier had spent decades healing tear open again in a single afternoon. In the middle of it, Charles reaches for Jaeon the way a drowning man reaches for a rope, and Jaeon is already there, holding the school together by will alone, whispering into every trembling mind the same simple words. "You are still yourself. You are still yourself. You are still yourself." He organizes what he can. It is not a war of armies. It is not a war of fists. It is a war of thoughts, and it must be fought on ground most heroes have never walked. Jaeon gathers those who are still whole or whole enough, and he prepares them for a kind of battle their world has no word for. Charles Xavier. Jean Grain. Dr. Strange. Emma Frost, reluctant and sharp as broken glass. A handful of others whose minds are strong enough or strange enough to hold their shape under pressure. Together they will not throw a single punch. Together they will step into the psychic realm itself. The transition is not gentle. One moment they are standing in a quiet room, hands joined in a circle, breathing in unison. The next, they are somewhere else, somewhere that is not a place at all. It is a landscape made of memory and meaning. Mountains of regret rise on the horizon. Rivers of laughter run through valleys of grief. The sky above them is not blue. It is every color a feeling has ever been. And walking through it, moving toward them like weather, is the thing they came to fight. The battle that follows cannot be described in the language of bodies. It is fought in images and echoes. Jaeon is struck by a wave of loneliness so vast it nearly unmakes him, and he answers with a memory of his daughter's small hand in his. Jean Grey is offered a vision of ultimate power, and she refuses it with the quiet strength of a woman who has already died and chosen to come back kinder. Dr. Strange is shown every future in which he fails, and he simply bows his head and says, "So be it," and steps forward anyway. Charles Xavier, frail in body and mountainous in spirit, holds a shield of pure compassion around them all, and the shield does not break. And in the middle of it, Jaeon learns something he did not expect to learn. He had always believed that his greatest strength was his mind, his telepathy, his shape-shifting. the raw, impossible power that had made him a legend on a dead world. But here, in this place, surrounded by minds he has chosen to love, he understands at last that power was never the point. Courage is not the ability to overwhelm. Courage is the willingness to stand between something terrible and someone you care about, and to refuse, with every fiber of your being, to move. He is not fighting to defeat the entity. He is fighting to protect the minds of others. And that, he realizes, is the only fight that has ever truly mattered. The entity, seeing that its armies of paranoia are not enough, finally turns its full attention on Jaeon himself. It gathers itself out of the swirling colors of the psychic realm and takes a shape that is almost, but not quite, a face. It has no eyes, only depth. It has no mouth, only a slow, patient smile that has never been kind. And when it speaks in Jaeon's own voice, because it has learned in its long, silent watching that the cruelest weapon in any universe is a memory. It shows him Mars, not the Mars of history books, not the Mars of distant myth, but the Mars he lived on. The small kitchen where his wife hummed while she worked. The red garden where his daughter chased small winged creatures under a soft copper sky. The temple where his father taught him that all minds were sacred, that to touch another was to be responsible for them. It shows him these things, and then, slowly, it begins to take them apart. He watches his home burn. He watches it burn again. He watches it burn a third time, from a different angle, so that he can see the faces of the people he could not save. The entity forces him to relive every failure, every hesitation, every second in which he might have done more, might have moved faster, might have known sooner. Every regret he has ever pressed down into the deepest chambers of his heart rises to the surface at once. And he stands in the middle of it, alone, as the flames he has spent centuries running from finally catch him. The entity waits. It expects him to break. It has broken beings older than Jaeon, wiser than Jaeon, stronger than Jaeon. It has watched entire species crumble under less. It leans close in the shape it does not have and whispers in the voice that is not its own. Let go. Give me your grief. It is too heavy for you. It has always been too heavy for you. You were never meant to carry a dead world. And Jaeon, standing in the fire, does something the entity did not predict. He does not let go. He reaches down into the burning ruins of everything he has ever loved, and he picks it up. All of it. The kitchen, the garden, the temple, the small hand, the soft copper sky. He gathers his grief into his arms the way a father gathers a sleeping child, and he holds it, not as a wound, but as a gift. Because grief, he understands at last, is only love that has nowhere left to go. And love, even homeless love, is still the strongest force he has ever known. The fire does not consume him. It becomes him. His memories, instead of breaking him, arm him. Every face he could not save stands behind him now. Every voice he could not answer sings in his blood. He is not the last son of Mars because his people are gone. He is the last son of Mars because he carries them, all of them, into every world he chooses to protect. And this world, this strange, loud, beautiful earth, is one of them now. He raises his eyes to the entity, and for the first time, the entity takes a step back. Far away in the physical world, Earth's heroes feel the shift. Steve Rogers lifts his shield. Tony Stark powers his armor. Storm calls the winds. Thor lifts his hammer. Wanda opens her hands. Doctor Strange draws a circle in the air that has never been drawn before. They do not know exactly what has happened in the psychic realm. They only know that something inside them has been given back to them, some quiet, steady certainty that they are themselves again, and that a friend is holding the door. They charge. And in the space between thought and thought, Jaeon, the last son of Mars, walks toward the thing that tried to unmake him and does not look away. When it is over, there is no great explosion. There is no shockwave that levels cities. The end of the psychic entity is quieter than that and somehow more beautiful. It simply unravels, the way a bad dream unravels when the sleeper finally opens their eyes. One moment it is there, vast and hungry and old. The next, it is only a fading pressure at the edge of the world, a shadow that has forgotten how to be a shadow. And then even that is gone. Across Earth, people wake up, not from sleep, but from something deeper. A mother, standing in her kitchen with a knife in her hand and no memory of why she picked it up, sets it down and begins to cry. A soldier, halfway through an order he does not truly believe in, lowers his weapon and looks at the man beside him and remembers that they were once friends. In the halls of the Avengers, in the classrooms of the X-Men, in the quiet corners of every city and village and station, small forgotten memories return. Kindnesses, the names of children, the reasons people once chose to love one another. The world does not immediately understand what has saved it. Most of it never will. There will be no parades for the being who fought a war no camera could film. There will be no statues raised to the man who walked into the fire of his own grief and refused to be consumed. And Jaeon, for his part, would not want them. He has never needed to be seen. He has only ever needed to be useful and, quietly, to be loved. The Avengers offer him a place among their ranks. Steve Rogers speaks for them, with the plain honesty that has always been his greatest weapon. You stood between us and something we could not see, he says. You do not have to stand alone anymore. The X-Men make the same offer in their own way. Charles Xavier simply opens the door of the school one evening and says, "There is a room at the end of the hall. It has always been yours." Even Dr. Strange, who trusts almost no one, presses a small silver token into Jaeon's palm and tells him that the sanctum is open to him, at any hour, in any shape. Jaeon does not choose one. He chooses all of them and none of them and something in between. He is a teacher some mornings, a soldier some nights, a quiet stranger on a bus some afternoons when the world is too loud and he only wants to hear it breathing. He belongs to this earth now, not as its guardian, not as its king, but as its neighbor. And that, he thinks, is the truest belonging he has ever known. On the last morning of our story, he stands on the roof of the school and watches the sun rise over a world that is not his own. The sky here is not the sky of Mars. The wind here does not carry the songs of his people. There is no red garden. There is no small hand in his. And yet, as the light spills across rooftops and rivers, as it touches the faces of sleeping children and waking heroes, he feels something he had not felt in a very long time. He feels at home. Perhaps, he thinks, home was never a planet at all. Perhaps it was never a place. Perhaps home has always been, and will always be, the people willing to stand beside you when the fire comes, and to still be standing there when the fire is gone. Mars is gone. But Jaeon's, the last of his kind, is not alone. Not tonight. Not ever again. And somewhere in the vast quiet turning of the stars, a red planet finally, gently rests.